Welcome to Silver Age Silver Screen, a podcast where we watch, discuss, and review sci-fi, cult, superhero, and other stereotypically geeky films. I'm your co-host, Casey Jarms.
And I'm your other co-host, Riley Thorpe.
And Riley, right now it's Valentine's Day, or a few days before Valentine's Day, or a few days after. I'm having trouble remembering, but it's Valentine's Day, and love is in the air.
Yes, it is, for everybody except for me.
Oh, please. You know how many single people there are in this country?
Very true.
Several. At least.
At least 5.
Definitely. And you know, it's odd, probably for our audience, to see us reminiscing about love. Because on this show, we're very critical of romance a lot in the films we watch.
Well, because a lot of it is just very poorly done, cheesy. A lot of studios like to force a romance into films because among test audiences and general audiences, having a romantic subplot is very appealing. Whether or not it actually works or fits within the story is case by case. But yeah, typically you and I are not a fan of the romantic subplot in some of our favorite and often least favorite movies that we talk about on this. So
yeah, we've criticized romance before, but like you said, it's because action movies that do 5 minutes on the romantic plotline total in the entire film don't have good romance. But what if we were to get a weird sci-fi film?
I'd like that.
Perhaps something written by Charlie Kaufman, you know, that dude who created Adaptation and Being John Malkovich. What if we got him to write an entire romance film with an interesting premise, and then it won a bunch of awards, including an Oscar for Best Screenplay? Would that be something we would like?
That is absolutely something I would love to talk about. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. What if it had a really weird name, though, that probably made it do bad at the theaters?
I don't know. I mean, as long as Ace Ventura's in it, I'd be down.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is a movie. It came out in 2004. Like I said, written by Charlie Kaufman. It was directed by Michael Gondry. It stars Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet and some other people. And honestly, this is one of the best films we've ever seen on this show.
Absolutely. I've seen this movie before, and just to warn all of you guys listening, this is a movie that definitely requires multiple viewings. And as someone who has seen the movie before, I always liked this movie. Like the first few times I saw it, I think I've actually only seen it once. The first time I saw it, I did like it, but second viewing, I would say, is much better. And that's saying something, because the first viewing was still really great.
It's interesting on the second viewing. This was also my second viewing, because this is one of those movies where about halfway through it has a big twist, and you don't get the impact of the twist the second time, but you also see how insanely obvious, you're shocked you didn't realize it immediately, the telegraphing of the twist was.
Absolutely. There's just incredibly minute details all throughout the story that would fly over your heads, or even my first viewing of it, I was like, this is weird. That's a really weird detail that they would include. I don't know why, but then upon second viewing, it makes perfect sense. It really works, and it's incredibly well written. Charlie Kaufman has written some bizarre, cerebral films, but goddamn, is he a great writer.
You say bizarre, like, yeah, that's the word to describe the guy who wrote the film about a dude who finds a magic door that turns him into actor John Malkovich.
The same guy who was hired to adapt a book, but then was having a lot of trouble writing that book, so instead he wrote a movie about him trying to write that book, and it's incredibly meta, and Nick Cage plays him. It's that level bizarre here.
Shall we just jump right into it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's Valentine's Day. Jim Carrey's character, his name is Joel, is kind of in the dumps. He feels kind of aimless about his life. And one day, he just decides to skip work and go to a beach in Montauk. And it's a terrible, terrible beach. It is so cold. That does not look fun at all.
No.
Why did he go there?
Maybe he had this gut reaction to do so that he didn't understand. He just knew that going to Montauk was the right thing to do. We don't know.
And also, throughout this whole opening thing, like we said, there are those breadcrumbs, and we're not going to draw attention to them, but we'll revisit them when we eventually talk about the twist. Anyway, while in Montauk, he befriends a young woman named Clementine with blue hair, who's kind of this manic pixie dream girl, except she's a deconstruction, but we'll get into that later. And they befriend each other, and they start a romantic relationship.
Yeah, we're introduced to Clementine on the train. They spark up a conversation, and they talk about a bunch of the things where they might have known each other, but they don't remember each other at all. But despite that, they spark up a really interesting relationship with each other. They seem to mesh very well as people. They complement each other on their strengths and flaws in many ways. Joel is very reserved and introverted. Clementine is very, very impulsive and emotional, and they just bring the best out of each other. And they spark up this relationship.
Then, jump cut to Jim Carrey in his car crying because Clementine has just broken up with him. Jim Carrey's character, Joel, he goes to visit with his friends, and he's complaining about how brutal this breakup was. He went to Clementine's place of work, and she just pretended that she didn't know him anymore, and it was brutal. And David Cross reveals that he received a letter about Clementine, that Clementine went to this mad science place and had all memories of her and Joel's relationship erased from her mind so she could move on.
But before that, I think we skipped something. Before that, Joel and Clementine, when they meet on the train, they essentially spend the entire day together. He takes her back home to her apartment. They go up, have some drinks. She gives him her number. He gets home and calls her. From there, we assume they spark up a very interesting relationship where one day Clementine takes Joel back to Montauk where they have a date on top of this frozen lake. And that's where we get the iconic shot of them lying down on the frozen water.
Yeah, this is going to be... We're going to be jumping around a lot as we talk about this film, not only because there's a lot of minor details that we're probably going to skip and then like, oh wait, earlier this happened, but also because this film, it jumps around a lot in its narrative.
It's a non-linear film. It doesn't tell a story in a single path. You know, it'll jump back into the past, it'll cut back to the future. It jumps around.
And that's part of the reason why I love this film so much.
Mm-hmm.
So, Joel and Clementine, they start their relationship. Jump cut to Jim Carrey crying. Goes to his bud's house. His bud tells him, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but she went to a mad science place and erased her memories of you. I remember that technology in 2003. It sure was cool.
Of course.
And Joel is just pissed about this. He goes to Lacuna, the mind erasing company, and he talks to their head doctor about it.
Played by Tom Wilkinson.
And the doctor offers to just erase Joel's memory of everything. That way, neither of them will know each other and they can move on.
A thing that really struck me on rewatching this is just the sheer irony that this entire office and this incredibly invasive procedure takes place in. It's just in like a regular clinic that you can drive to in your hometown. And in that clinic, they're doing this extremely experimental procedure to completely wipe all of your memories of a particular subject or person. I don't know, it's just a very funny sense of irony to that.
Mystery Sounds Theater 3000 mantra. Just don't look at this too hardly. Don't question the fact that there's this revolutionary, brilliant neuroscience advancement that could be used for a lot more than erasing all memories of your ex-girlfriend. Don't concentrate on that. That's the world of the film. Let's see what can be told with that, and what can be told with that is interesting.
Yeah.
So Joel, he signs up to have all of his memories of Clementine erased, and he records a tape of all the reasons why he wants Clementine erased from his memory, and he goes back to his apartment, he takes some sleeping pills, he falls asleep. And then Elijah Wood and Mark Ruffalo break into his house to erase his memory.
Interestingly, Elijah Wood made an appearance earlier in this film when Joel drove Clementine back to her apartment. Elijah Wood's character, Patrick, he walks up to Joel's car, knocks on his window, and they have this awkward interaction like, oh, what the hell was that all about? But then later on, we find out that Patrick is one of the people that works for Dr. Howard, the one doing these procedures to wipe people's memories. The way they hide Elijah Wood's character, Patrick, the way they hide Patrick's identity for the longest time takes a little while. You don't at first realize that Patrick is one of the people erasing his memory. They hide his face due to just clever camera work or blocking of the actors. It was very well done, very interesting.
I mean, he sounds like Elijah Wood, which is a bit of a giveaway, but yeah, you don't realize that one of the technicians is this guy who showed up at the beginning for some reason until later on, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the memory erasing procedure starts, and we get to watch Joel rewatching his memories of him signing up for the procedure. And it's kind of trippy. A lot of stuff in this movie is kind of trippy.
Yeah, Charlie Kaufman in general, his style is very, very cerebral. He explores the idea of space and time. A lot of his themes include the characters finding themselves through other people's and how they see them. It explores a lot about the subconscious of the mind. And whenever you're talking about that, you're already dealing with a very trippy subject matter. And that's where Charlie Kaufman arguably works his best. That's really, he's only ever worked in his best.
While Joel's memories are being erased, the technicians, they fucking goof off. They go through his things. They drink his booze. Mark Ruffalo invites over Kristen Dunst so they can party with her. She's the receptionist at Lacuna, the memory erasing building. Oh, also, Elijah Wood talks about the fact how the other night, when they were erasing Clementine's memory, he did some things he probably should have. First off, he stole her underwear because,
They were clean. He explained that. They were clean. He's not creepy.
Yeah, okay? That's not the issue, Riley.
Yeah, the issue here is how extremely unethical that is. And not to get into spoilers, well, we are, but not to get ahead of ourselves, this film does explore a lot of the sort of unethical nature that a procedure like this would entail, you know? And this is just icing on the cake.
Oh god, and it isn't revealed until a few scenes later, but Patrick, Elijah Wood's character, he admits to Mark Ruffalo that while he was erasing Clementine's memory, he kind of fell in love with her and then went to her place of work and started dating her using all the information he has about her to try and seduce her.
Yep.
You know, sometimes when we get into this, like we were in this a lot in Zardoz, we were in this a lot in James Bond. I don't have a problem with characters being evil. Well, I kind of have in Zardoz because of how it was portrayed. I worry sometimes that people misunderstand when I say, and this happens, ugh! If that's a thing the film wants you to go, ugh, to, that's good. Elijah Wood is supposed to be creepy and he does it really well, but oh boy, is he a fucking creep.
Oh yeah. Elijah Wood often plays very creepy characters. Like, there's a Netflix movie called I Don't Feel Safe at Home Anymore, or I Don't Feel Home in This World Anymore, something like that. And even there, he's playing a really good guy. He's like a sweet, good person. But even there, he's like awkward to the point of kind of being off-putting. So he in general does that a lot.
Like Elijah Wood, it's interesting. People, when they talk about this movie, they say, oh, he's going against typecasting. Not really. I mean, I know he played Frodo and also was in a few other roles kind of similar to that, but he does creepy in a lot of stuff. There's I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore.
That's it.
He plays a sociopathic murderer in Red vs. Blue.
He plays that exact same thing in Sin City. He doesn't talk, but he plays a cannibal murderer.
In Dirk Gently, he starts out being normal Elijah Wood, but it's eventually revealed that no, he's kind of a bit of a creep.
Yeah.
Like Elijah Wood, he breaks typecasting so much, and every time he does it, people say, oh, he's breaking typecasting. This is weird for him. It really isn't.
No, he's a really good actor, and from what I've seen of him, he seems like a pretty good guy, but he plays a lot of creeps.
So, back from Joel's perspective, as they're going through his memory, deleting stuff, the subconscious aware version of Joel is watching through his memories. And we get to see some memories of him with Clementine, some mixed ones.
And that was one of the things, well, first of all, it was in this scene where he first goes into his memories that he realizes what exactly this situation's going to be like, how he can interact with his memories and even the people in the perceptions of the people in his memories, which is very interesting. And, what was I saying?
Did you forget?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. Fuck. Go on. You can go on.
Okay. I'm sorry. It's not really funny. It's just...
No, you're good.
Like, we forget shit all the time in these reviews, but this is the type of movie where it's funny to forget what happens.
Oh, yes, now I remember. Okay, yeah. It's very interesting, the relationship they establish between Joel and Clementine. It's a very realistic one in that they're a little toxic at times, especially in the beginning of this film. They get into fights constantly. Joel, like we said, is a pushover. Clementine's very impulsive. They get into a lot of fights, and sometimes in public places. You know, at first we see, like, okay, yeah, they broke up, which means they obviously have a lot of bad memories towards each other, but as the film goes on, you start to realize, like, okay, they fight, but that's just what relationships do. Like, they're a regular, realistic couple. They're not like, everything's horrible, or everything's the greatest it can possibly be. No, it's like, it's a good mix of the two. It's like, there's good and there's bad. And they flesh that out very well as the film goes on.
Joel and Clementine's relationship, it hinges on the fact that they're very different people. Joel is neurotic and boring and overthinks things, whereas Clementine is impulsive and temperamental and messes up a lot. And can't be honest, they probably shouldn't be together as a couple.
No.
They should not be together.
Right. They get into a fight at a farmer's market surrounded by people because Clementine says she wants children, but Joel argues that, you know, that's a big responsibility and they might not be ready for that real soon. And she just starts yelling at him because, you know, she has what she thinks, Joel has what he thinks, and they clash.
And there's another scene where she comes home after driving drunk and crashing into a fire hydrant, messing up Joel's car. Side note, when they met at the start of the film, Joel's car was also messed up. That's the type of thing that happens a lot in this film. We'll just brush past that for now. And they tear into each other. He accuses her of sleeping with people to get them to like her, and she basically just calls him a dick. Because, let's be honest, he is kind of. They're a toxic couple, and you can see why they broke up.
Yeah, she wrecked his car and cheated on him, and he called her
Never cheated on him.
Well, she claimed that she started messing with him. She's like, oh yeah, did I? I know that's what you're thinking, so I'm going to torture you with that. And then he called her a drunk and a whore.
Can't be honest, these people should not be together. Although at the same time, after we get a few scenes of them just being a terrible couple together who should not be together, we do start to get some really sweet stuff. We get a flashback to them on the ice. And oddly, this time Clementine has red hair. We get this scene of him comforting her over some childhood trauma of her basically hating herself when she was a kid. And Joel starts to freak out at the memory eraser. Even if him and Clementine aren't a good couple, he wants to hold on to these memories because they're meaningful.
Right, exactly.
He goes to his mentor version of Howard, the head scientist, and he's like, Doc, I gotta stop this. I don't want my memories erased. Dude, I'm just your subconscious. I'm not the real dude. You can't break out of this. Have fun.
Joel even says, "Oh God, please don't take this memory from me," because it's something he cherishes and something he does want to hold on. And that was one thing, like I mentioned earlier, this film very much so explores the idea that forgetting isn't the best option. In a relationship, yeah, there was a lot of bad, but at the same time, there was also a lot of good. So if you choose to forget, and in this case, literally have them removed from your head via brain damage, which is what Howard says happens, they damage his brain. In taking the bad away, you're also taking the good. And either way, that's not healthy. That's not a good way of dealing with a tragic situation. You need those memories. You need the bad and the good in your life so that you can move on in your life and be a better person. Joel begins to realize that, and now he decides, I am going to fight this procedure and try to hold on to the memory of Clementine.
Meanwhile, in the real world, Kristen Dunst shows up to the party. Elijah Wood decides, you know what, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna go take all the stuff that I have from Joel and use that to better seduce Clementine because I'm the fucking worst.
Right. You realize that, okay, not only is the memory of Clementine within Joel's mind at stake, Clementine, like in the real world, she is at stake because she's being preyed upon by a creep who's manipulating and taking advantage of her. So that's something he has to fight.
Yeah, so Elijah Wood leaves to go be a fucking creep. Holy shit, he's a fucking creep in this movie. And Joel, in the dream, he starts trying to fight back, both to hold on to the memories he's cherished and to just, wake up and beat the shit out of Elijah Wood. Fuck that dude.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, Mark Ruffalo's character Stan isn't too much better either, arguably.
The Lacuna people in general are kind of sus.
Yeah.
Erasing someone's memory when they ask you to do it is morally gray. Stealing women's underwear and trying to seduce them through manipulation and theft is super not okay. Like, Mark Ruffalo's an asshole, but he's not in the same ballpark as Elijah Wood. Mark Ruffalo, at best, he's just negligent with him banging Kristen Dunst while he's doing brain surgery.
Yeah, I mean, he laughed when Elijah Wood told him what he was doing.
Yeah, fair enough.
He's not as bad as Elijah Wood, but he's no saint either.
So Joel starts trying to save Clementine, and he ends up grabbing a version of Clementine from a memory of his and talking out what's going on, and they decide to run away to an older memory from before he met Clementine and just hide Clementine there, because if he has that mental version of Clementine there, he won't forget there. It's dream world. It has confusing physics. And they run to when Joel was a kid, and we get to see Jim Carrey pretending to be a little kid, and it's kind of, like I said, a lot of this movie is weird.
In this scene in particular, they do a lot of really interesting stuff with forced perspective. Like Jim Carrey, as a kid, he's like hiding underneath the table. Meanwhile, Kate Winslet, who's Clementine, who's taken on the role as their neighbor, watching him for those few minutes. They're both in the same scene together, but Joel is very, very tiny and sitting under the table as if he were a child, whereas Clementine, as an adult, is much larger than him. And that's not done via CGI. It's done through clever camera work that was most notably done throughout a lot of the Lord of the Rings films.
How fitting.
Yeah. So it's just a lot of clever prop design, camera placement, camera movement, blocking of actors. Again, very, very well done. The production design, just in general, like the production design, the blocking, how Joel will sort of cut in and out of memories, and like he'll be sitting in the chair at the clinic, and then he'll like immediately cut to him and Clementine at the farmer's market, and he'll be still sitting in that chair that's inexplicably in the middle of the farmer's market. Or maybe he'll be underwater and then lift his head up in another memory and he'll be drenched in water. Like, very clever, very well done, very convincing.
So, Mark Ruffalo. His name is Stan, but I'm gonna keep calling him Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo realizes, shit, while I was busy being negligent, mental Joel escaped and everything's off track. Quick, I'll try and fix this. Oh no, I can't fix this. Let's call in Howard. Let's call in the doctor who's actually good at this. They call him in and he starts doing some fixing to get Joel back on track and make sure the erasure of Clementine goes well. And something we haven't really talked about yet, This film has some pretty horrifying imagery at points.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When Howard comes in and he fixes the machine, Memory Joel and Memory Clementine are having a bath together. And then Clementine disappears and Joel gets dragged under the water and starts drowning and his mind is being torn apart. And earlier, when Joel first realizes that Clementine is being erased from his mind, Clementine's face just disappears. Like, there's some creepy imagery in this film at times.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And another thing that struck me upon this viewing is the thought of, okay, well, they know they're reading Joel's mind and they know he's not on the right path. Then they're having a hard time erasing the memories of Clementine. Don't you think that a doctor and his physicians would realize, oh, he's constantly trying to fight us. Maybe we should stop the procedure because he doesn't want it anymore. No, they keep going with the procedure against his will and even give him a sedative to knock him out so that it goes under even better. Howard is a mad scientist. He is arguably very evil. I know he comes across as a regular, average, everyday Joe, but if you really think about what he's doing, it is so unbelievably unethical. I get that he signed up for the procedure and he wanted it, but I don't know. Maybe they'd realize, hey, maybe he doesn't want this anymore. We should stop, you know?
Speaking of Howard and ethics, Kate Winslet's character, Mary, it's revealed that she has a crush on Howard, and as Howard is working, trying to erase Joel's memories, she starts hitting on him. Put a pin in that. It's gonna be important later. But anyway, Joel and Clementine...
Kirsten Dunst's character.
Kirsten Dunst... Oh, God. You can't have two actresses with the same first letter, okay?
Howard, he shows up, he gets them back on track because Stan and Mary were partying and too busy drinking and trying to hook up. Which, funny thing about that scene, apparently that entire scene, the shots of them partying, that was completely improv. In that, Michael Gondry, the director, just said, hey, we'll just take the entire night, we'll all just drink, party, have fun, and we'll film it the entire time. So them partying, that was them legitimately getting drunk and having fun. Which is funny because the director, Michael Gondry, he got into a lot of trouble with the producers because of doing that, because he burned up so much time and film and whatever, they got a good shot.
Joel and Clementine, they're running through Joel's memories, trying to escape erasure. They try to hide in a shameful memory of Jim Carrey's so Clementine doesn't get erased. That doesn't work, but we do get to see an awkward scene that I'm gonna brush right past.
Yep, Mom walks in on him jerking off.
You see, when I said brush past, that meant, okay, let's just ignore this.
Yeah, let's ignore it now.
But anyway, Joel and Clementine, for a good deal of this film, are running through Joel's memories, and they start to reflect on their relationship as they're seeing these scenes of things that happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, in the real world, Elijah Wood tries to recreate the frozen lake date with Clementine, and it doesn't go well. She starts crying and freaks out.
Yeah, because she realizes that there's something not right here.
Something very, very wrong.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong is that he exists.
Yeah, that's a pretty good reason. I mean, just look at the way he's acting. I mean, come on. They recreate that date, but she realizes something's not right, and she runs away crying. And they drive home. She's crying. And he's trying to comfort her, saying all the things that Joel said to her on their dates. And it's just not right. It's just messed up.
So, not to dwell too much on the individual scenes of Joel and Clementine's relationship, but it explores their whole relationship somewhat out of order. Oh, there is actually a really nice scene where they travel back to when Joel was a kid and he was being bullied, and Dream Clementine changes the memory to stand up for him. It's sweet.
Yeah.
But anyway, ultimately, Joel and Clementine end up in a memory of the beach party where they met, and we get to see their relationship starting. And I feel side note, we should just get on with the twist of this movie. The first 20 minutes of this movie happen after Joel and Clementine have their memories erased.
Mm-hmm.
That scene constantly contradicts things that happen later in the film, and that's the big plot twist, that they're meeting again for the first time at the start of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. That was the thing that upon second viewing, you catch on the little things. Like Clementine's hair changes, and we're told, yeah, it changes all the time. But like in specific scenes, it'll be similar to what it is in other scenes. But if you line up the timelines in a linear fashion, it doesn't work. But if you think about it, like, okay, the scenes where she has orange hair take place much earlier, and then the blue hair scenes take place currently.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what's the most minor one of that? You could just assume that's a different year. But at the beginning of the movie, when they meet, it is Valentine's Day. And then when it jump cuts to Jim Carrey being all sad because he's been dumped, it's few days before Valentine's. And you could think, oh, it's just a different year. But no, that's out of order.
Very clever.
But anyway, Memory Joel and Memory Clementine, they ultimately realize it's hopeless. They're just doomed. They can't escape.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna lose memories. And they end up where they first met, for real this time. Also at that beach on Montauk, at a party where they just start talking to each other. And Joel left his fiancée for Clementine. And their first real date was them breaking into a random beach house and just messing around in it. Which is kind of weird, but also kind of cute.
Yeah.
But also kind of really illegal.
There was a deleted scene that I have seen. I don't remember a whole lot from it. Because Joel mentions that when he met Clementine, he was living with a woman named Naomi, and he keeps regularly pondering whether or not he should get back with her. I believe the deleted scene I saw was he meets back up with Naomi and is like, hey, I don't remember why we broke up, because the memory of Clementine had been erased. And she's like, oh yeah, you left me for someone else, and he has no recollection of it. The scene was pretty redundant, but there were deleted scenes with Naomi. She was an actual character at one point in the movie.
Yeah, she doesn't appear in the final version. I know of a different deleted scene that we're gonna fucking talk about when we come to the point where it would have happened.
Okay, sounds good.
But anyway, in the memory, the house starts crumbling around them and they say their goodbyes. And as she's finally erased from Joel's mind, Clementine whispers into Joel's ear, "Meet me at Montauk," setting up the start of the film. Also, in the real world, Mary starts making out with Howard and he's a bit uncomfortable. He's like, oh, I shouldn't do this. But then he keeps kissing her anyway. And then Howard's wife shows up. And we find out that this is not the first time Howard and Mary had an affair. It happened at least once before. And Howard, with Mary's consent, erased Mary's memory of it. Also, in a deleted scene, it's revealed that Mary, in their original relationship, got knocked up and had an abortion. And
oh boy.
You see, this is really scummy. A, married, middle-aged man starting a relationship with a young employee of his, and then when his wife finds out, erasing all of her memory of it. Howard.
Yeah, again, that goes back to the idea of just how unethical this entire process is. A middle-aged man, a father, a husband, a professional, starts taking advantage of his very young, it's never stated how young, but she acts like she's about our age. She's in her early 20s, maybe even late teens.
Let's see, she was born in 1982, so she would have been 24 during this film.
Point is, he starts preying on a girl half his age. And if you look at it, because he, like you said, he has her memories wiped, and then continues to let her work for him. So, A, that's a red flag right there, but B, afterwards, Mary goes back to the office and she finds the recording that they made of her trying to forget the affair. But if you really listen to the dialogue they have in that recording, you can very clearly see that Howard is the one telling
pushing her towards
it.
She's
telling him, I can't go through with this. This is too much. And he's like, no, we agreed that this is the best, remember? So not only is he preying on a girl half his age and then wiping her memory, but he's also keeping her around. And he was the one who pressured her into getting her memory wiped against her will, or trying to, manipulating her into doing what's best in his own interest. Again, super creepy, super unethical. And again, there's a debate on whether or not Mark Ruffalo's character Stan knew about what had happened the entire time. So again, he's also potentially preying on a girl who doesn't understand, who doesn't remember because she had her memories wiped. All the people that work there, except for Mary, are pretty scummy people.
Well, to be fair, Mary is related to the memory stuff, but after seeing the stuff, she has some character growth and becomes a good person. We'll get to that in a second. So, all of Joel's memories of Clementine are erased. The next morning, on Valentine's Day, he goes to Montauk. He meets her again, and they restart their relationship. We get all the stuff in the beginning. The reason Elijah Wood was there is because it's right after he started preying on Clementine. And immediately after, where the intro stopped, it continues on with Clementine getting a letter from Mary at Lacuna that contains an explanation. Hey, you erased all your memories. Here's a tape of why you did it. Enjoy. And she starts playing it in the car with Joel, and we just get them both reacting to her basically listing off reasons why she hates him. And Joel goes back to his apartment, and he finds his tape and listens to all the reasons he hates Clementine. And despite that, this film ends with them getting a drink together as Joel's bitching tape is playing and saying, "Wanna try our relationship anyway?"
Okay, that's literally what they answer to that. Okay. But, that sounds very mundane, but if you really think about it, it's a really amazing commentary on relationships and love. It's a really good portrayal of the idea that love and emotions, they're deeper than just our memories. The memories we have of people. That was one of the things that was established when it was revealed Mary and Howard had an affair. She didn't remember, but she still had feelings for him. And clearly, as we've seen, Joel and Clementine don't remember each other, but they still have this strangely deep attraction and love towards one another. It's a very interesting commentary on love. And at the end, they recognize they have flaws. They recognize that each other has flaws. They even say, we learned to hate each other once. We're probably going to do it again. But they're okay with it. They're fine with that because they've learned that in order to live the best life now, you can't be obsessing about the past. In order to create a better future for yourself, you have to focus on the here and now. Who do you love? Was it toxic? I don't know. I'm kind of talking myself into a corner here because if it's a toxic relationship, you should probably end it. But they still have feelings for each other and are willing to work on it.
Yeah, to be honest, they're gonna break up again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I don't see these people ending together long term.
No.
But still, there's something beautiful in that they still try because they care about each other. Regardless of how it ends up, there's something really human and touching in this film's ending with them choosing to try for love even though they know it's probably doomed.
Right, exactly. It's a very beautiful story, a very unconventional science fiction story. It almost entirely takes place inside a person's mind. How do you visually manifest that on screen, And they found a very interesting and compelling way to do so.
Yeah, just basically areas falling apart as the memories of them are destroyed, and Clementine just losing pieces of herself, just cutting from area to area with the characters just walking through. It's very good.
Yeah.
And honestly, the best thing in this movie is just the writing and the constant foreshadowing and subtleness.
Yes.
One really good thing. When Clementine and Joel meet, Clementine says, "Oh, and don't make any jokes about my name." "What do you mean?" "I'm a darling, I'm a darling, I'm a darling, I'm a..." I don't know what that is. What are you talking about? And then later, when we get flashbacks of their real meeting, as soon as he hears her name, he does the Huckleberry Hound thing. This is a phenomenally written movie.
Absolutely.
It has one of the best scripts out of any film I've ever seen.
In addition to that, I would argue everything else about this is almost as fantastic. The direction, the acting in this movie is fantastic. fantastic. Jim Carrey's a very good actor when he wants to be. Not to say that he wants to be a bad actor at times, it's just he can really bring it. And in this film, he absolutely brought it.
Yeah, he's an amazing drama actor.
Yeah.
Like, just look at the movie, The Truman Show. He's amazing in that. Look at The Cable Guy. Look at the thing he did on Andy Kaufman. He's a phenomenal actor.
Yeah.
And honestly, the comedy stuff he does, he would not be able to pull it off if he wasn't a good actor.
Right.
It's not just Jim Carrey. There's not a weak link in this. Kate Winslet is also phenomenal. Kristen Dunst, Mark Ruffalo, Elijah Wood, Tom Wilkinson, they all put in solid performances.
You know, a lot of people in the industry say that comedy is arguably the hardest genre to pull off successfully. That's why a lot of comedic actors and comedians are able to pull off such incredible dramatic performances. Because in order to be successful at comedy, arguably a lot of comedians draw from their own dark experiences in order to have a comedic side, because that's what they do. They deflect and they deal with issues through comedy. On that same note, a lot of what it means to be a successful comedian is understanding people and understanding human reactions to things. And that's a huge part of acting as well. Like, you gotta understand how someone would react in a particular situation. And Jim Carrey, very good at comedy, and he knows how to act. Like you said, this film would not have worked if Jim Carrey was a bad actor. He's not. He sold this movie very, very well. He has a very youthful exuberance about him just in general. But in this film, he's very reserved. He's a very extroverted person, but he's able to portray a character that's very introverted quite well.
Yeah. And a perfect contrast to that comes from Kate Winslet doing this deconstruction of the whole manic pixie dream girl thing as this deeply broken, possibly mentally ill person who's still someone you sympathize and feel bad for and want good things to happen to.
Right. It also presents a couple that, is not the best together. They're a little toxic. They are probably going to break up. But because they have such deep feelings for each other, they choose to be together for now, at least, because that's what they want. And they might break up in the future, they might not, we don't know. Although arguably they probably should break up because they're not the greatest couple, but...
Yeah, they're probably... Actually, do you know, I read some stuff about the development of this film.
Yeah.
2 things. First off, we haven't discussed the name of this movie, besides making fun of it for being long. Mm-hmm. It's a quote from a poem by Alexander Pope that Mary brings up at one point in the movie.
Right.
Also, while he was writing the movie, Charlie Kaufman's original title was 18 words long, and that's insane. Was it just the entire poem?
I mean, knowing Charlie Kaufman, probably.
But anyway, to my more major point, the original scrapped ending with this was an elderly Joel and Clementine meeting on Montauk again after going through this whole song and dance like a dozen times.
Oh boy. I'm glad they didn't go with that ending. I could conceivably see how that might have worked on paper, but no, I'm glad they went with the ending they did. That would probably have been a little too much. You're kind of bleeding more into the torture territory with that one. They've been doing it for their literal entire lives, and it's a relationship that probably wasn't gonna last. Is it really worth it? I don't know.
Oh god, you know how the movie Push based on, or what is that? What's the one with based on a novel by Sapphire?
Was that adaptation?
No, that's the title of the movie.
Oh.
Hold on. I am going to Google that real quick. I haven't seen it. I've heard it's a very good movie. Precious, based on the novel Push by Sapphire, is the official name of a movie. It's usually just called Precious, but because that's its official name, at the Oscars, they had to, every time they talked about it, describe it as Precious, based on the novel Push by Sapphire.
Yeah.
So imagine in the alternate universe. I say in the alternate universe a lot as imagine if this had happened. Imagine in that universe where Kaufman went with his original title. The 2 lines before the thing that this film gets named from are probably what he went with. So, and the final nominee for Best Screenplay is How Happy is the Blameless Vestal's Lot, the World Forgetting, by the world forgot Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, written by Charlie Kaufman. And the winner is How Happy Is This Blameless Vestal's Lot, the World Forgetting by the World Forgot Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind by Charlie Kaufman! Clap, clap, clap.
Yeah, that's a lot like Birdman, which won Best Picture in 2015.
Alright,
The title is Birdman or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. And every time they mentioned it, they always included The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. Just call it Birdman. That's all anyone ever calls it.
I'm pretty sure legally they have to call it The Unexpected Virtue of...
I'm sure. I understand it. I'm just saying it's funny. Like, no one calls it that. I mean, come on. But yeah, you're right. 18 words long title. That would turn off a lot more people than were already turned off by Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Imagine that poor guy who has to hang the letters.
Getting the work in today, boys.
So we've reached the point that comes in most of our reviews where we get completely off track because we've run out of things to talk about, and I believe that's normally when we give scores. Mm-hmm. Riley, what are your thoughts on this film?
This movie is arguably one of the best movies we've ever reviewed on this show. Granted, that's not saying much against the likes of Captain America 1990 and the Star Wars Holiday Special, but even so, everything about this movie is great. Like the acting, the writing, the directing, the editing, and the cinematography are very stylistic. Like in any other movie, I would argue that this style of editing and shot design just would not work. But here it's so stylistic and it absolutely does work. The editing is very jumpy and very janky because it's like you're inside someone's mind that's falling apart and it's trying to show you absolutely everything that it can in order to tell its story properly, in order for the twist to make sense, and upon rewatching it, it makes even more sense. There's a scene in particular, that one we mentioned where Joel turns around and Clementine's face has disappeared. Like, the lighting in it, it's like a light on top of the camera itself that moves with them, and all you can see, they're in a completely dark room, but all you can see is whatever the light on top of the camera is shining on them. And normally, that would seem very amateur and very, arguably not mainstream, quote-unquote, great lighting. But it really works because this film is so incredibly stylistic and it makes it work. Yeah, the acting, the writing, directing, editing, cinematography, it's so beautifully stylistic and it has such a great message about relationships and love and human connection. Not even including the fact that Charlie Kaufman wrote it, because his films are always something to behold, but this movie is very much so something special, and I recommend everyone watch this. From casual viewers to hardcore cinema lovers, just everybody should go and support this movie. And for that reason, I'm going to give this movie a 9.5 out of 10.
There is nothing bad I can say about this movie. It's a creative concept, executed wonderfully. The acting is amazing. Like I said, I adore this movie's script. I wish I could write something this clever and this beautiful. This movie is fantastic. This is one of the best movies I've ever seen, period, and definitely the best movie I've seen on this show. Like Riley, I'm gonna give it a 9.5 out of 10.
Nice. Awesome. I'm pretty sure that is probably the highest rated movie we've ever had on this series, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, eat shit, Die Hard! Your time on top is over!
We still love you, Die Hard. I just realized in my head right now. I'm like, realistically, I'm probably never going to give any movie a perfect 10 out of 10. So 9.5 is pretty much the highest rating I'll ever give a movie.
I'm not saying I would never, but at least how I rate things, 9 is a movie with minimal flaws and just perfect execution, but maybe not stylistically how I like it. 9.5 is perfect execution, but stylistically something I really like. I struggle to think of a 10.
We might come across it, we don't know. Tune in next week to find out. And then the next week.
Maybe
and then the next week.
Blade Runner 2 or The Prestige, I don't know.
We'll find one eventually.
Yeah. Although speaking of our ends, you think we're ever gonna get lower than the Star Wars Holiday Special?
I don't know. I haven't seen Birdemic.
Okay, maybe Birdemic, but I don't think I will ever give a 1 on this show, because a 1 wouldn't just be a bad movie. To me, a 1 is a movie that's so bad, so vile, that I really hate it. And we watch films I dislike. We don't watch films that I hate. And those are very big difference.
Yes.
Like, how we end every episode is, hey, it's just a movie, don't lose your head about. A 1 would be a movie that I would lose my head over because I hate it so much.
Just a quick personal note. I think the worst movie I have ever seen personally is that 2018 John Travolta Gotti movie. And the reason why I say it's the worst movie ever is because there's so much talent that goes into this. Like John Travolta and his wife, Kelly Preston. Kelly Preston has since passed away. May she rest in peace. But the two of them who've been acting for decades. Eric Connolly, who played E in Entourage, he directed it. Like, there's so much talent in this movie. And yet, every single second in the film, I am baffled by how bad every single decision was. Like, that movie, I think I would give that one a 0. Or if I wouldn't even give that one a 0. I'd give it a 1 because it's so laughably bad, I have to take pity on it.
Let's see, what would I give really low scores? Kind of related, and we're off track. A film that I can think of that's, I mean, it's not in terms of production design the worst things ever, but the script is so bad and the people involved in it could have made so much better. Pixels is really low for me. Let's see, the movie Trash Humpers, which both of us have seen.
Yeah.
That's the least enjoyable movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's an art film designed to be like that, so I don't despise it. I just never want to watch it again. Also, I'm not going to name names, but I've watched a lot of super Christian films that have the central message of anyone who isn't a Christian is evil and you should hate them and be afraid, the Muslims are coming for you. I've watched a couple films like that, and I feel like I would give those ones.
Yeah.
Especially the ones that feature cast members of Duck Dynasty for some reason.
I know exactly what you're talking about. At least this movie, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, is fantastic and not one of those really bad movies. That's the point of this tangent.
Yeah. And Riley, where can they find you?
You can all find me on YouTube at Riley Thorpe, where you can check out all of my latest short films and video essays. You can also find me on Instagram and TikTok at Riley James Thorpe, where you can check out all of my content, updates to things in my YouTube channel, and updates for whenever a new episode of the show comes out.
Hey, you can find my writings at caseyjarms.wordpress.com, and for updates on my projects and this show, follow me at Twitter at JarmsCasey, JarmesCasey. We'll be back next week, assuming we don't accidentally erase all of our memories of the show. And next week we're watching Man of Steel.
You know, I've in the past not been the biggest fan of the movie, but I am absolutely very interested in rewatching it, looking back, getting a second opinion all these years later. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try and go into it with an open mind, but I'm just laying it out. I don't like Zack Snyder's Superman very much.
Neither do I, but I'm open-minded.
We'll keep an open mind. And that's next week.
Mm-hmm.
Till then, my name is Casey Jarms.
And I'm Riley Thorpe.
And hey, it's just a movie. Don't lose your head about it, especially not to a ladder.